I find myself oscillating between one frustrating venture after the other. I saw badass Ravi Kumar. I mean, I hooted and cheered for that film without even a single brain cell of mine working, but I know it's going to be a minor blip one won't really remember even as a parody film. And then I went for the uninspiring remake of Love Today that featured honestly mediocre performances and just provided me a reality check on the state of the film industry and the disparity in talent and opportunity. I look back at the review footage and got alarmed at how serious I became in the final moments, making some of you slightly concerned if I was okay, but it's just genuine frustration stemming from a Hindi cinema fan just being subject to uninspiring stuff week in and week out. I know I literally have given you all a sermon regarding the frustrating state of remakes in Bollywood and how no matter how much I rooted for films like Baby John and Deva to work, both films did not venture to take risks in having its own distinct identity. In a recent survey done by Men's XP, one learns that 23 out of the 25 remakes since the pandemic that have gone into production and eventually released from Bollywood have failed at the box office. This is not taking into account the remakes that release directly digitally because the number shoots up way more than 25. The only exceptions to the rule being Drishyam 2 and Shaitan that went on to become box office successes. So while I hope the slate of remake comes to an end, the one film and just talent in general that I want to rave about is Mrs. starring the extremely talented and underrated Sanya Malhotra that just released on Z5, the official remake of the Malayalam film The Great Indian Kitchen directed by Geo Baby. Because I feel it's not only a necessary remake to be seen by people in the Hindi belt, but also a clear testament to amazing talent that after years of work is barely getting recognized and celebrated. Sanya, among many others, deserves that. And while we're giving sermons about criticizing mediocre products of nepotism, I think it's about time we celebrate people slogging it out, acing their roles, but barely getting the same hype as these examples. I actually tune in consistently for everything Sanya Malhotra stars in, because I've been rooting for her success since she started her career. As she has consistently also delivered as an actor who has the ability and range to be the timid and soft-spoken Meloni in Photograph, but also the loud and crass Chutki in Pataka. She can pull off the soft-spoken and blunt Sandhya in Paglet, but with the same conviction pull off a fiery and confident Jyoti in Love Hostel. I am literally listing out her movies and stellar performances to you because she is an actively working millennial actor who has this range but barely gets any mainstream theatrical attention. And as I stepped in for Mrs., I was ready for not only a convincing performance by her as Richa, but also a film that has adapted the source material fairly well for the tale to have its own identity. I've always felt that great actors in romantic moments will make you feel like you're a third wheel, almost making you embarrassingly smile as characters interact with one another. As Richa gets married to Divakar played by Nishant Daya, you clearly see great actors at play. This is the odd honeymoon phase of the arranged marriage setup. Both actors glance at one another, the awkward approach towards holding one's hand gives you butterflies, and even a mere exchange of sharing's one Wi-Fi password brings a smile to your face. Arshad Varsi once had described great special effects as that which cannot be noticed, much like great acting. And in these moments, I genuinely felt like I was intruding this special bond that sadly just becomes a smokescreen for Richa. Richa, a trained dancer, assumes that her identity will not change with this union. She is hopeful in the initial days of her marriage, more than willing to learn and getting accustomed to this new family. This is where the windshield wipers finally make the view clear. The Hindi remake pays great attention to presenting two generations of women in the same household. This beautifully reflects on the subservient customs one generation has become accustomed to and never questions it, and one which is hesitant on why such inequality has been normalized. The existence and purpose to provide meals to the men of the family and then provide sex and comfort in their beds makes Richard doubt the very decision to accept this union. There is this heartbreaking frame of the mess left after a meal by the men, and the women of the house pick up the scraps and eat the cold leftovers, assuming it to be anyway fair. I love how beautifully Aarti Kadav also presents certain aspects in the periphery so seamlessly. You see the details of a new car being provided to the family in Dahej. In the backdrop of the wedding ceremony, Richa's father being tense while taking care of the marriage arrangements. You notice these subtle details of what one has assumed to be their birthright when families offer their daughters to other families, only to become a means for the elderly women to pass the baton on to someone younger and more capable to serve the men of their family and nothing more. When you see moments of solitude where Richa just sits on the couch for a breather or takes a deep breath in the pantry, exhausted with her circumstances, you empathize deeply with her because the film brilliantly, much like the original film, builds the irritation and anger within the protagonist that simmers on low heat, knowing very well it can burst at any moment. I always considered microaggressions to be a very overused term used by sensitive people who can't take a joke. But after my own experiences in relationships and seeing multiple films that highlight such acts, especially done exceptionally well in movies like English Winglish and Thappad, where casual yet misogynistic comments like this are passed at partners.
And my wife, she was born to make laddu. अरे मैं तारीफ कर रहा हूँ बाबा.
One realizes how Mrs. and Richa's ultimate anger is a build-up of these several moments. This is expressed through something as dramatic as wanting to do a job and it being rejected as a mere hobby, to even having the wild idea of sitting with the men of the household at the same time as they eat, expressed through a shocked expression showcased by the patriarch played by Kawaljeet Singh. In a heartbreaking sequence when expressing her sexual needs to her husband, she is shamed for simply expressing them, condescendingly stared at and judged for even having desires. It's these moments of the pitch-perfect performances and uncomfortable conversations that causes you to appreciate the film despite it being a remake. The Great Indian Kitchen is one of my favorite Malayalam films for its slow build-up of frustration. While the focus on the remake is more on the food and its preparation, the oppressive term of pyar se banana looming around the corner constantly, what the original film does brilliantly is exhaust you in the rigmarole of the kitchen, dishes and cleaning. So much so that you see Nimisha sweat, her hair being a mess, and Geo Baby makes you feel the burden of these chores. Whereas in the remake, the creators depend on montage, set pieces and music that make it more aesthetic rather than what is the reality. It's filthy and grimy. What I also loved about the original film is that it does not resort to using names of these characters, allowing the issue and problems to be universal from a gender standpoint. It does not allow for it to be a commentary on any particular religion and its customs. The remake in some ways becomes a commentary also about Karwa Chauth and the sacrifices women make regarding their health, all for their male counterparts. With exceptional performances nonetheless, Mrs. really turned out to become a remake that also had its own identity versus just a generic retelling, and it showcased an achingly beautiful performance by Sanya Malhotra, who I wish all of you hype up. These are actors who work exceptionally hard, constantly deliver with consistent appearances, but still not get the mainstream attention, while countless opportunities are given to star kids to hone their craft and eventually become comfortable on screen. This is where I want to take the opportunity to rave about some of the events that have happened with these outsiders recently, just to give you an overview of what is required to make it. I, a few months ago, had sat on a podcast where I slightly was criticized for a statement I had regarding Kartik Aaryan and Tripti Dimri. You do the predictable beats of a Bhool Bhulaiya to become a bankable star so that then you can take the risks. What I'm saying is, the judgment of him doing a Bhool Bhulaiya, अरे same चीज कर रहा है, अरे the movie is done 160 crores in 5 days, which his Chandu champion couldn't do in its lifetime. A statement on where I do have an empathetic lens towards the commercial choices someone like Kartik Aaryan and Tripti Dimri makes when they get excessively trolled, because when they do make creatively sound choices to challenge themselves as actors, there are little to no takers. So when a Kartik does a Chandu champion or a Tripti does a Kala or Bulbul and we rave about it within the confines of this channel, one should realize that these are not leading to commercial opportunities for the big leagues to even take notice of them. Kartik in a recent interview spoke about his journey being compared to other actors and why it's like apples and oranges, because it takes years of ventures being successful for most production companies to take notice of them.
किसी का बेटा अगर लॉन्च हो रहा है, किसी की बेटी, तो उनके लिए न्यूज़, उनके पास एंडोर्समेंट्स पहले से ही आ चुके होते हैं विदाउट इवन प्रूविंग. मुझे पहला एंडोर्समेंट शायद से सोनू टीटू के बाद प्रॉपर एंडोर्समेंट मिला था. 7 साल 8 साल हो गए थे इंडस्ट्री में.
Similarly, I would hope to believe that Tripti may be getting typecast now, but I know with the commercial power and some influence, she would finally have the freedom to make those same challenging choices she made initially in her career and hope that it connects with a larger audience. While I was raving about Sanya on X and Instagram just recently, I saw comments on people wanting to gatekeep a talent like Sanya. The same comments that people said when Tripti was getting attention after Animal. But this is the odd parasocial relationship that we should stray away from. In not wanting them to strive towards higher monetary goals, all because of the assumed notion that they will become subject to flower pot roles. But do you want them to eventually be in the big leagues of top actresses, or keep them reserved for the underrated category all their life? Mrunal Thakur frustratingly speaks about the same, on how despite giving 2 commercial hits in Telugu cinema and doing great work in Hindi cinema, the big leagues and production companies still don't consider her for leading roles.
I don't know, yaar. I'm just really tired of proving my filmmakers now.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want it to happen organically now. I've done asking them. I don't know. I don't know how to reach out now.
You look at someone like Harshvardhan Rane, a lone wolf so self-motivated and so talented, and he spoke to me about 4 years ago talking about Sanam Teri Kasam and how he appreciates all the messages and love that the film gets online, but when it released, how no one went to the theatre to watch the film.
आप लोग टिकट नहीं खरीद रहे इसलिए नहीं बन रहा है.
Right.
अगर आप टिकट खरीदे होते तो पार्ट 2 क्यों नहीं बनता, पार्ट 3 भी बनता. बट मेरे प्रोड्यूसर को एक प्रॉफिटेबल फिल्म से क्या नुकसान होगा, उनको तो फायदा ही फायदा है, वो तो बनाना चाहते हैं. सर पैम्पलेट फ्लायर क्या, मैं तो आप बोलो मुझे रंगोली बनाने में वो बनाने चला जाऊंगा, बट मेरे पास ऐसी एंटाइटलमेंट नहीं है, ऐसे फैमिली बैकग्राउंड से हम में से कोई नहीं है कि हम लोग घर बैठ के बोल दें अपनी टीम को प्रमोट कर दो.
9 years later, as the movie re-releases, the film's box office revenue is higher than its original run. And while the audience is celebrating the man and his film after so many years, there are accounts trying to discredit its celebration. That's also a part of the system, you know, in wanting to pull down someone even when you see the unanimous love being showered upon someone deserving. It's not as gloomy as the industry was 20 years ago and was explained by Rajkumar Rao a few years ago.
Something, Manoj sir told me, and I took it, of course, in a very, I really love him and respect him. He said, I'm very jealous of you, man. You bloody came in this era. You had to come when we were struggling, looking for work. There were not many films being made. And they were only doing 1 or 2 films a year, and that too probably playing a guy's friend or a villain, typical villain.
When actors who were reserved for the indie space were working in the industry close to 20 years ago, the likes of KK Menon and Manoj Bajpayee were reserved to doing limited work, and the avenues to express oneself had only broadened today. When you see a Rahul Bhatt thrive in Black Warrant or a Jaideep Ahlawat get deserved attention and praise for Patal Lok. This kind of attention did not exist for them a few years ago. Yes, they might be categorized as OTT actors, but if you just see the way Jaideep and Vijay Varma describe how life was a few years ago, you realize that opportunities have increased tenfold from what they were close to a decade ago.
पहले भी घर पे मिलते थे, अभी भी घर पे मिलते हैं. हाँ, घर थोड़े फैंसी हो गए, बट
हाँ, घर थोड़े बेटर हो गए. अब वहाँ खाने की चीजें होती, जो मांगते हैं वो मिल जाता है.
The atmosphere today allows for the Mehta Boys to release on Amazon Prime Video, for us to appreciate someone like Avinash Tiwari and Baman Irani, communicating the universal hurdle fathers and sons have to deal with, beautifully performed, and a talent that again should be considered in the big leagues for theatrical releases. At least some faith is warranted for the consistently good work Avinash does. The point of it all is to acknowledge talent first and not consistently bet on mediocrity. These are not favors, but a business where crores are being spent on projects and with little returns being showered upon your efforts consistently. If you're putting it on mediocre talent, it would only be wise to invest in talent that is prepared and can deliver, versus someone who just strolls on set, knowing that this is where they belong, while having nothing to show for it. As an audience, let's make sure to spend time on hyping up real talent more than trolling mediocrity as we consistently do.